this. It looks like this is war. The White House is in an epic battle with Congress, doubling down on its strategy, and that strategy is to stonewall. That strategy is to obstruct. That strategy is to refuse to cooperate in any way. It's right there in black and white. In the letter the White House sent to Nancy Pelosi and the chairs of the Intel, the Foreign Affairs, and the Oversight Committees, they sent it just tonight. The absurd, and I mean absurd, claim that the president has been left with no choice. Okay, remember that, no choice, those two words. Going on to refuse to participate in what they claim is a partisan and unconstitutional inquiry. No choice. No choice. Really? The President of the United States claiming he has no choice but to stonewall and to obstruct in the face of lawful inquiries from Congress. Why does this president always see himself as a victim? He's the President of the United States, arguably the most powerful person on the planet. Why does he always see himself as a victim? He has everything. Is he really a victim? And he's putting that out there to people who have no reason to feel victimized. Everybody's a victim. I'm a victim. No one forced him to make that call to the president of Ukraine. No one forced him to do it. He had a choice. No one forced him to ask a foreign government to interfere in the 2020 election. He had a choice. No one forced him to do it again and to do it out loud when he asked China to interfere, standing right on the White House lawn. He made the choice to abuse the power of his office. And now he is refusing to cooperate with Congress, with Congress's investigation. He's a victim. He had no choice. But Congress is fighting back with subpoenas for Ambassador Gordon Sondland, a millionaire Trump donor, to turn over documents on the Ukraine call by Monday and to appear in person on Wednesday. That after the State Department ordered the ambassador not to testify as scheduled. And this is important. Listen, they did so after consultation with the White House counsel's office. You know what that is? That is a clear sign that the White House is calling the stonewalling shots here. It's got to make you wonder. It's got to think about this. Why are they willing to risk a charge of obstruction, a potential article of impeachment, to keep Ambassador Sondland from testifying? Why are they willing to do all of that? You got to wonder that. Nancy Pelosi making exactly that point in her statement tonight, and I quote here, it says, "The White House should be warned that continued efforts to hide the truth of the president's abuse of power from the American people will be regarded as further evidence of obstruction." And as the battle rages between Congress and the White House, the president is up to his old tricks again. Here's what he's trying to do. He's trying to discredit the whistleblower with a charge that he or she is politically motivated and reportedly had a professional tie to a 2020 Democratic candidate. But here's the thing. When I always say, don't get distracted. Don't fall for the okie doke. Here's the thing. The Intel Community Inspector General, who mentioned in his report that the whistleblower has what he called arguable political bias. He went on to say in the very next sentence, and I quote, "Such evidence did not change my determination that the complaint relating to the urgent concern appears credible, particularly given the other information the Intelligence Community Inspector General obtained during its preliminary review." In other words, the claims checked out. And in the face of all this, we're learning more tonight about what the whistleblower saw and what the whistleblower heard. A source telling CNN that the whistleblower wrote a memo describing the reaction of the White House official who listened to the Ukraine call, that official calling the conversation, quote, crazy and frightening, leaving the official, quote, shaken. Those are not words that you'd expect to hear from a member of the administration describing the president's call with a foreign leader. And it sounds an awful lot like there are people serving in the White House right now who were frightened by the president's behavior. But one of the president's most reliable defenders, the man who seems to have forgotten all about then candidate Trump calling him a disgrace and a nut job. Someone calls you a disgrace and a nut job. Remember that? He seems to have forgotten that. And that is the Senate Judiciary Chairman, Lindsey Graham. He says he'll invite Rudy Giuliani to speak to the committee about Ukraine. Bet that won't be behind closed doors. Because Senator Graham is handing the president's attorney a golden opportunity to broadcast his conspiracy theories and disinformation in defense of a president who is refusing to cooperate with Congress. You know what? Lindsey Graham sure has changed his tune since the Clinton impeachment.
Article 3 of impeachment against Richard Nixon, the article was based on the idea that Richard Nixon, as president, failed to comply with subpoenas of Congress. The day Richard Nixon failed to answer that subpoena is the day that he was subject to impeachment because he took the power from Congress over the impeachment process away from Congress, and he became the judge and jury.
Where's that Lindsey Graham? Was he like snatched by the invasion of the body snatchers? Did the body snatchers get him? Who was that guy? Then there's Trey Gowdy, who sources tell CNN will work with the White House as outside counsel. Trey Gowdy, the former congressman who felt really, really strongly about anybody withholding information and documents from Congress. Well, he felt strongly when he thought Democrats were doing it.
The notion that you can withhold information and documents from Congress, no matter whether you're the party in power or not in power, is wrong. Respect for the rule of law must mean something irrespective of the vicissitudes of political cycles.
If they're watching, I wonder if the sheets, like, oh my God. You guys aren't embarrassed for that? Trey Gowdy, of course, went on to chair the Benghazi committee. Remember the multiple investigations that went into Benghazi that ultimately turned up nothing. Remember those? And the millions of dollars that were spent turned up nothing. And then there's another familiar face from those hearings. Then Congressman Mike Pompeo, who sure had a lot of complaints about not getting documents from then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
I will tell you that the record that we've received today does not reflect that. It simply doesn't. We've read the emails. We've read everything that we could get our hands on. It's taken us a long time to get it, but I will tell you, you just described all of this other information that you relied upon, and it doesn't comport with the record that this committee has been able to establish today. It would have been, we don't know exactly who.
Well, it would be helpful.
It would have been one of your State Department employees, Madam Secretary. I don't know which one. Perhaps you could enlighten us, or we can get the records we need to do so.
Where is that Mike Pompeo? But when it comes to giving information to Congress now, or even answering questions, here's Mike Pompeo dodging.
Mr. Secretary, why did you instruct Ambassador Sondland not to testify?
Thank you all. Good morning.
Nothing to say there. The president marshaling his Republican defenders as the battle rages with Congress, and taking to Twitter, of course, to say he would really love to send Ambassador Sondland to testify, but he can't. He's the president, right? Couldn't he do it if he really wanted to? Blaming what he calls a kangaroo court where Republicans' rights have been taken away. Now, where have I heard something like that before? I'd really love to cooperate, but...
Would you be willing to speak under oath to give your version of those events?
100%.
Are you going to talk to Mueller?
I'm looking forward to it, actually.
To reach a higher standard, you would do it under oath.
Oh, I would do it under oath.
Mr. President, would you still like to testify to Special Counsel Robert Mueller, sir?
Thank you. Sure. I would like to.
You would like to?
I would like to.
I would love to speak because we've done nothing wrong. I would love to speak. I would love to go. Nothing I want to do more. I would love to speak. I would love to. Nobody wants to speak more than me. In fact, against my lawyers, because most lawyers, they never speak on anything.
Are you more likely to sit for an interview now?
My lawyers are working on that. I've always wanted to do an interview because, look, there's been no collusion.
President sure has learned the lessons from the Mueller investigation, hasn't he? And there was another Twitter exchange today that you might have missed. The president, who almost 3 years into his term, still can't quit Hillary Clinton, tweeting that she should run again and steal the race from Elizabeth Warren. Clinton's very succinct reply, "Don't tempt me. Do your job." The president waging war on Congress's impeachment inquiry. So what are Democrats going to do about it? The White House and the president making it crystal clear where they stand on the impeachment inquiry in a defiant letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The administration refusing to cooperate and claiming the inquiry is unconstitutional. Let's discuss now with Congressman Peter Welch, who is on the House Intel and Oversight Committees. Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate you joining us. Good evening to you. President Trump is telling you and fellow Democrats exactly what he thinks of your impeachment inquiry. And guess what? He's not complying. So what are you going to do about it?
Well, first of all, that is that's his MO, and we're not going to see him change that. And whether we're asking for documents or witnesses, he's going to stonewall. And that in and of itself creates the question of an impeachable offense. And it goes not to the obstruction of justice issues that were in the Mueller report. It goes to the obstruction of Congress. You know, we've got three branches of government co-equal. And if there is no oversight authority in a Republican or Democratic Congress, then essentially you have a president who's beyond accountability. And that's what President Trump is saying. He's saying that he will decide whether he deems it appropriate for the people's branch of government to do any oversight. And he's made it clear that he won't. He won't cooperate. He won't send witnesses. And obviously he's patently duplicitous on this. When Ambassador Sondland flew here to come to our Intel committee, was prepared to testify, the Trump White House said he couldn't. And then you saw President Trump saying he would really like him to do it.
Well, he did the same thing during during the Mueller investigation. But listen, the only surprise for me is that it took him so long to do it. I thought you would have gotten that letter much earlier and not at the, at the 11th hour. But I've got to ask you about part of the letter from the White House, and it reads, it says, "In the history of our nation, the House of Representatives has never attempted to launch an impeachment inquiry against the president without a majority of the House taking political accountability for that decision by voting to authorize such a dramatic constitutional step." The House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has shown little interest in holding a vote to open an inquiry. Why not hold that vote if you believe this is right?
Well, there's two reasons. First of all, the president doesn't make the rules for the House of Representatives. That's the whole point here. We've got separate branches of government, and we do not have to take orders from the president. And it's really important that the House of Representatives not do that. And can you imagine Lindsey Graham acceding to demands from the Clinton administration, or Trey Gowdy from the Obama administration? So this is political theater. That's one. The second thing is, our objective is, in necessity, is that we go through this carefully and develop the evidence before we reach conclusions. And that's the methodical approach we're trying to take in the Intelligence Committee and, of course, Oversight and Foreign Affairs. Because ultimately, in addition to Congress voting, this is going to be something the American people have to participate in. And the more we get the evidence out to them, and the more, by the way, the press helps get the evidence out to them, the more they get involved and start influencing their members of Congress. Well, so no, here's the bottom line to the president. He does not have the right to establish the rules by which we proceed in the House of Representatives.
I get you. So the U.S. ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, has been subpoenaed to testify next Wednesday after the White House abruptly blocked today's appearance. So what do you do if he doesn't show up next week? What are you going to do?
Well, you know, you've got the point. Basically, if he doesn't show up, then we can go to court and we can have this prolonged process, which is exactly what the Trump administration wants. They want to run out the clock. So at a certain point, I think we're going to have to make a decision whether to move forward on the issue of obstruction of Congress by the president for refusing to provide any witnesses, any documents that have been provided by all presidents when requested before him.
All right. Congressman Welch, thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Both the Trump administration and House Democrats gearing up for a bitter impeachment battle. Does the White House have a legal argument for not complying, and what recourse do House Democrats have? House Speaker Nancy Pelosi hitting back at the White House. She says any efforts to hide the president's abuse of power will be considered evidence of obstruction. Joining me to discuss now, John Dean, Douglas Brinkley. Gentlemen, good evening. Good to see you. I just want to read this. This is from Article 3 of the Articles of Impeachment drafted against Richard Nixon. And it says, in his conduct of the office of President of the United States, Richard M. Nixon has failed without lawful cause or excuse to produce papers and things as directed by duly authorized subpoenas issued by the Committee of the Judiciary of the House of Representatives and willfully disobeyed such subpoenas. John, is this where we're heading now?
Well, it might be, but it's not a very good place to go, Don. That happens to have been the weakest article against Richard Nixon. The committee barely got a majority. It was a 21-17 vote. Not all the Democrats actually voted against Nixon on that. So it was a weak read, and a lot of members didn't even want to take it to the floor. They thought there were other powers that were stronger that they should use for contempt situations. But as I say, this might be where we're going as one of the articles if the House doesn't get their spine up and do something.
Well, this letter, this White House letter, Douglas, dares the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, to hold an impeachment vote. But a senior administration official declined to say how the White House would cooperate with Congress if a successful vote was held. I mean, lay this out for me. How necessary is this vote? And does the White House really need it to comply with the inquiry?
Well, look, that letter is the Trump White House declaring war on Congress. We are set up now for an epic battle between the White House and Congress. I mean, you know, we're looking now at the stonewalling of the White House. The Congress is going to have to fight back with subpoenas. We're into an election cycle with 2020 going on right now. We're in a full-bore mess. But I think what helps the Democrats right now is the evidence is on the table. The fact of the matter is Trump's conversation with Zelensky is of public record. The transcript is the equivalent of the tapes of during the Nixon era. It's Trump, in his own words, making the quid pro quo deal. And so the Congress now is just trying to figure out when they should act, how much information to get, how much cooperation they can get from State Department, CIA, and the White House and other branches of government. But in the end, here right now, we're heading in for impeachment. Is on the horizon. I'd say in the next four weeks, Congress has to act.
Has to act, and you're not sure which way they're going to go now, right? You think they will do it?
I think they got to act, and I think they have to do it this year. I say in 4 weeks, but maybe a little longer. But it can't bleed into the holiday season, Don, where it's Christmas and everybody's watching Congress impeach the president. So you have Thanksgiving might be a good marker. I don't think otherwise. It's just going to go on to being illegal cases, and impeachment is political. Congress has every right on the evidence of the Zelensky call alone, let alone obstruction and other issues alone, to put forward article of impeachment.
They've got to act, essentially, is what he's saying. Do you agree with that, John?
Well, as I recall, the Clinton impeachment They did do it just over before the holidays, and the trial was in the the next year. I think what they're going to do, Don, is they're going to try to build the strongest case with the most evidence they can do in a reasonable amount of time. They know they're going to be stonewalled. Why they're not really adopting and using their inherent powers of contempt, fining people, for example, for not showing up, and making it a rule. They've not even such a rule in the House at this point. So they could put some fear in the White House by just adopting basic rules of the game. And they don't need the Republicans to do that. And it would be not unfair to the president because he's playing the Stonewall game. Anyway, I think end of the year is realistic.
It was today that the articles of impeachment were written and drafted and put out for Bill Clinton, October 8th, correct? Yeah. I've got to go, Douglas, quickly.
What, Don, can I just? Oh, okay. Well, I was just going to say the difference is this is an election cycle. I mean, Richard Nixon had won a big re-election in 72. So 73 and 74, the Democratic Party could build the case greater. And with Clinton in 1998, it wasn't a presidential election on the horizon. Right now, this won't be fair to Joe Biden if it continues. If what Trump's trying to go after his biggest rival, and it'll just be, Biden being remembered for Ukraine instead of being a statesperson if this drags on well into 2020.
Thank you both. I appreciate it. The White House defiant tonight, but that's a